Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the SACOG Land Use and Natural Resources Committee meeting on Thursday, May 4th, 2023. We're going to start off, this meeting is being recorded. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Gore, will you lead us in that, please?
Happy to. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Next is roll call, please.
Real quick, Chair Bradford, I apologize. There's one more piece of housekeeping that I forgot about.
Okay.
For members of the public viewing this meeting online, we accept and encourage public comment and have provided options that are listed at the top of this meeting agenda. Okay, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Director Boulahine?
Yeah.
Frost? Absent. Gore?
Here.
Harris? Absent. Kennedy?
Here.
Knisely? Oh, sorry, Director Knisely, I think.
Here.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Aquino for Kozlowski?
Here.
West?
Here.
Vice Chair Baines? Absent. Vice Chair Lozano?
Here.
And Chair Bradford.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Next up is public comment.
Hold on. We don't have a public comment, but it looks like Vice Chair Baines is in the panel or in the attendees list. Let me promote him into the to a panelist 1 second, but no public comment.
Okay. So next we will move on to the consent agenda items. There are 2 items under consent. Any board comment or questions, or anyone want to pull anything? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on consent?
There's no public comment.
Okay, let's, is there a motion?
Move to approve. This is West. Second by Baines.
Okay, have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
All right, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Boulahine?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Gore?
Aye.
Harris? Absent. Kennedy?
Aye.
Knisely?
Aye.
Aquino for Kozlowski?
Aye.
West?
Aye.
Vice Chair Baines?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lozano?
Aye.
And Chair Bradford.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next up is item 3 under information, City of Folsom planning efforts, Central District revitalization and multifamily design standards.
Hi, I'm Greg Chu. I'm on the planning staff at SACOG, and periodically we try to bring items to the committee about what local governments are doing. And currently SACOG's been giving out a number of grants. We have the Green Means Go grants that you've been hearing about in the past. We have the Regional Early Action Planning grants, which are specifically for housing. And we also, you're going to hear later about the regional funding round program on the agenda today. So we thought we would invite the City of Folsom because they've been able to take advantage of these grants, and they have a lot of planning efforts that I think are applicable to the rest of the region. We have with us today Desmond Parrington. He's the principal planner and project manager for the City of Folsom. Works on a variety of tasks, including zoning code updates and implementation for the city's new electronic development review and permitting system. Prior to joining the City of Folsom, he was at this for 15 years. He was at the City of Sacramento doing a variety of roles, including senior development project manager, infill coordinator, senior planner, and associate planner. He was the planner behind the Golden One Center. And prior to that, he worked in the private sector as a land use consulting planner, working for jurisdictions throughout California. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Desmond. He's going to talk about some planning efforts that the city's doing.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here. get the presentation going. Oops, let me switch the display settings. There we go. And then, yeah. Just Robert or Greg, do you need me to turn on the closed captioning for the subtitles?
No, we actually have it on via Zoom, so you're okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So as Greg said, I'm Desmond Parrington with the Community Development Department at the City of Folsom. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the efforts that we're undertaking thanks to the grants that we received from SACOG. Not only did we benefit from the Civic Lab program, but we also benefited from a couple of different funding rounds, including the Green Means Go and prior REAP program grants. So one of the things that we are working on is really implementing our general plan was adopted in 2018, and our housing element that was adopted and certified in late 2021. So we've been looking at, sorry, let me minimize this so I can. What the city has done is identified key areas for future growth, and that includes our East Bidwell corridor, which is kind of the main commercial corridor in the community, and then areas around 2 out of our 3 light rail stations, the Glen Station at Folsom Boulevard and Glen Drive, and then the Iron Point Station at Folsom and Iron Point Road. And then in addition, the Folsom Plan area, which is south of Highway 50, it's a 3,500 acre new development that has a town center, which is where we're looking at encouraging more growth. Part of the reason that we've undertaken this is to also look at revitalizing the central business district, which is this area here. So many of you may be familiar with the historic district, which is over in this area. This is called our central business district, and it's an older area of the East Bidwell corridor. So the purpose of all this is to help kind of re-envision and revitalize the central business district. It, like I mentioned earlier, it has older buildings, higher vacancy rates, not really a great environment for people to gather, and not a great environment for pedestrians. One of the things that we also need to do as part of our housing element implementation is increase multifamily housing capacity in those target areas that I mentioned. And the whole idea behind this is using well-designed infill to not only reduce vehicle miles traveled and reduce greenhouse gases, but also to support transit and enhance those existing areas where we are seeing either vacancies or some disinvestment. So the first effort that was funded by SACOG was for us to do a targeted multifamily and mixed-use housing study. The objectives are really to get the community's input on what types of housing, what types of mixed use, kind of sizes, forms, and so forth would be acceptable and would help to improve the areas. We also evaluated the market feasibility of development and looked at our regulatory environment to see if that was helping or hurting the kinds of development that we wanted to and the community wanted to see there. So we looked at things like density, parking, building height, and setbacks. And like a lot of the region, particularly out in the suburbs, we had a density maximum of 30 dwelling units per acre, but we had other standards that made development difficult. And one of the key components of this, and to help get the community to understand what it was that we were looking at, was we brought on Opticos Design, a design firm out of the Bay Area that's done quite a bit of work in our region and is familiar with our region to develop example prototypes of how areas could be transformed and how those projects could help improve the walkability and improve the overall character and put people closer to jobs, services, and the existing businesses that were there. So this is an example of a potential infill site. Sorry, it's a little out of order. Let me show you the existing building. This is an older thrift store, in an older building in the central business district and part of the East Bidwell corridor. Looking at it from up top, this is a design plan that that Opticus came up with. Obviously, you can see that the density is close to double what we currently allow, and the parking has been reduced. But at the end of the day, you could potentially get something along the lines of this. And this kind of shows the key design characteristics that we would want to build into any kind of objective design or development standard. Because as many of you may know, the state has radically reformed the development review process to allow for more housing to be built. But what that means is that we need to have in place objective design standards so that the applicant, the developer, and the public know exactly what is expected of the project, so they can try to meet that from day one. And so these show some of the elements here, like upper stories that are stepped back or integrated into the roof form. In the pink area there, storefronts down here in the tan area, and then pedestrian entries at the street level, and then some open space incorporated as well. And again, closer to the street to make it more inviting for pedestrians to walk through. And of course, this is a more contemporary interpretation of the same type of development. So we put both out there to the public. We did something similar at our Glen station. This is one of our light rail stations, and improvements are underway to improve the service from 30 minutes to 15-minute service. So every 15 minutes, light rail trains will stop. As you can see, the parking lot is often pretty vacant. This is a kind of a park and ride lot. And so the idea would be to find a lot adjacent to it to still keep that park and ride capacity, but to do something along the lines of this, to put people closer to light rail, to encourage them to use light rail, less likely to have to drive to work in this kind of scenario. So this gave the public an idea of what kinds of developments were possible at these locations. So coming out of that were a number of recommendations, and thanks to our city council, they reviewed these with us and accepted the recommendations. So increasing density, but also moving away from density to floor area ratio. The reason why that's important is because what we were finding was that our densities were actually worsening in some ways worsening our affordable housing challenge, in that if you're capped at 30 dwelling units per acre and you're trying to make your project pencil, what was happening was that developers were trying to do larger units to stay under that 30 dwelling unit per acre cap. And those larger units, of course, have higher rents because they're larger units. If you move to a floor area ratio, which is really based on the ratio of the building square footage to the size of the lot, then there's more of an incentive for the developer. The developer is able to do more units, and they can do smaller units that are more naturally affordable. So we looked at increasing the heights in the area, reducing the parking space down to 1 if the developer did things like provided other incentives like for transit or shared parking or a car share vehicle or things like that. And then the council also recommended that we develop objective design standards, which is what I'll be talking about later in this presentation, so that we would get quality development and the public would have a better understanding and a better assurance that we're going to get quality development in these areas. And then lastly, they also encouraged us to work with the landowners down in the Folsom Plan area south of Highway 50 to rezone additional sites for multifamily development, and particularly to encourage some more intense development around the Folsom Town Center, which is at the heart of the plan area. The next phase that we've begun and that we're in the middle of right now is looking at ways of increasing our multifamily housing capacity, particularly our lower income housing capacity. As many of you may be familiar with, the regional housing needs allocation in this go round increased significantly from what it was in the previous 8-year cycle. And every jurisdiction's wrestling with this. We had a 6,000 or about a 6,000 unit allocation this go around, and about half of that, well, actually more than half, 3,500 had to be for lower income households. One of the challenges that we're seeing is that those sites that we identified in our housing element for affordable development, we're seeing market rate projects come in and develop on those sites, and those projects are not affordable. So we are concerned that we may be in a situation in a year or less where we're in what's called a no net loss. That means that we have that we've had so much market rate development on sites that we had identified for affordable housing that we now no longer have enough capacity in our housing element to accommodate the lower income need in the element. And as a result, we'd have 6 months to rezone sites. So we wanted to get ahead of that. So we looked at increasing densities using FAR in those areas that I talked about, the East Bidwell Corridor, Glen Iron Point Station. Try to disperse the housing opportunities throughout those areas. Working with property owners to pursue residential development. And then, as I mentioned earlier, working with the landowners down in the Folsom Plan area, which we've done, and we've gotten some commitments from them to do more affordable housing, which is important. So we looked, working with our consultants at Ascent Environmental, we've been looking at the potential capacity in these areas. So the areas 3, 4, and 5 there is the East Bidwell Corridor. Those are kind of the different areas of the East Bidwell Corridor. You have the Central Business District here. You have the Creekside area where Mercy Hospital is. And then you have the College and Broadstone area where the Palladio is down here and where Folsom Lake College is. And then you have the Iron Point Station here and the Glen Station, this area. And then of course, down here is the Folsom Plan area. So this is a fairly aggressive approach. And as you can see, there's a pretty significant potential increase in capacity, which we are evaluating. So we're looking at, water, traffic, sewer, all those types of things in an environmental impact report and in technical studies, because ultimately this is going to result in general plan and specific plan amendments that would allow for this more intensive development. And the idea is to revitalize and add more housing to the commercial corridor, so we don't see any continued loss of retail. Fortunately, in Folsom, we have a pretty healthy retail environment, but the retail environment continues to change and has been really hit by online sales. So everyone's been dealing with that. And then the hope is that this will not only help us for the current regional housing needs allocation cycle or the current housing element cycle, but also for our next housing element as well. In addition to that, we got again, thanks to SACOG, we had an advisory services panel come out from the Urban Land Institute, and they brought international experts on land use, development and design that came out, and they provided a number of recommendations as well that helped to support the recommendations that we got from Opticos. They specifically focused on our central business district, and looking at streamlining our process, increasing densities, working with new developers, land assembly, and then using financing tools that might help to support additional housing and infrastructure in the corridor, things like a property-based improvement district or an enhanced infrastructure finance district, which are ways of raising money for those. The other piece that we're working on and about to embark on, again, thanks to this most recent round of Green Means Go grants, is to work with a consultant like Opticos Design to develop objective design and development standards. The nice thing about this is it's much more visual and I think easier for the public and developers to understand. It uses the form-based approach. So you've got good photographs and illustrations of exactly what is expected. And that it provides some assurance to the public that the infill development will end up enhancing these areas. Because the last thing we want is poor quality development. It's going to turn people against doing additional multifamily or additional mixed use or additional affordable development in the community. We want to see projects that are really going to enhance the area, support the local businesses that are there, and create really a gathering place and a reason to go to the central business district rather than just to do one errand, but to stay and linger, like in the historic district, like in the Palladium. So we've also released a central business district master plan RFQ to bring on a consultant to help us look at the built environment, look at circulation, look at design, look at ways that we can improve the area and help implement the community's wishes and also the ULI recommendations. And the idea is to create that center of activity that I talked about. So we're looking to get those proposals back pretty soon and are looking forward on embarking with that. So with that, open up to any questions. And again, we wanted to extend our thanks to SACOG for the support that they've given us to pursue all these efforts. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm sure the committee must have some questions. Any questions? Okay, well, I don't see any yet, so
No.
oh, there we go. Dr. Lozano?
Yeah, I have a question regarding, and maybe this is for Councilwoman Aquino or either one, actually. I'm interested in how you overcame the thought in the community that higher density development was going to change the way the community felt in terms of living and all of those things, and got over that hump. And what was, I guess, what was used to educate the community on that?
So
I can jump in here first
sure.
and then
Yeah.
Defer to Desmond, who, by the way, Desmond is currently our principal planner, but he's been promoted to our planning manager later this month. So congratulations to him. I'm not sure that we have fully convinced the community yet. The number one thing, that we hear as council members is, why are we building so many apartments in Folsom? And obviously then you have to explain to everybody about the RHNA numbers and all the mandates from the state and all that kind of stuff. And our ability to make decisions about local development is being usurped, as we all know. So I would say we're not quite there yet, but a couple things. I think, we hear a lot of complaints about traffic, particularly on East Bidwell, and hopefully we can get people to buy into the vision that we're kind of creating this more urban walkable community within a suburban city. And then you've got folks like me who I have a daughter who's going to graduate from college in a couple weeks. And I think creating, again, more of that urban feel, some of these multi-story buildings in that district, just kind of, it kind of appeals to a different age group, I think. So those are my initial thoughts, but I'll pass that to Desmond.
Yeah, I very much agree with what Councilmember Aquino said. It is still very much a work in progress, but the things that we've noticed. So we did a survey. We got about 400 responses as part of that survey to really get people's input on the size and type and form of buildings that they wanted to see in the different areas. But the things that I've noticed that have resonated with folks are the visuals and stories. So for example, when the ULI team came out, they met with a class at Folsom High School. It was an architecture class. And they asked how many of them, after they graduate and go on to college and then when they're looking to settle down, how many of them were looking to come to Folsom, and nobody raised their hand. And to me, that's frightening, because these are some of the best and brightest kids that we have in our community. And to see that none of them can come here because they don't think they can afford it, that's kind of frightening, because what does the future look like? And then the other thing that has been helpful is also people that have, who have children, or who are getting older. And I'm like, I don't want, the 2,500 square foot home and the 6,000 or 7,000 square foot lot anymore. I can't maintain that. I'd like someplace where I have to drive less, but I can still, be close to my neighborhood, be in my same community, and get to all the great restaurants and the shopping that we have here. But I've heard from folks like, we wanted that, but we couldn't find that here in Folsom. And so those are the kinds of things that are starting to, I think, resonate with people. Understandably, everybody's concerned about traffic, but if we actually don't do this and we put people further away from our shops, further away from our offices, then those folks are going to have, 2 vehicles, whereas somebody may be able to get by with 1 vehicle or using transit and a bike if we put them in these more urban environments. And then the use of the visuals was really helpful, I think, to get people to understand we're not talking about high rises here. We're talking about appropriately scaled development that is attractive and that can put people closer to these restaurants and closer to the services. So we're not seeing vacancies, and so we see people continue to reinvest in these areas. And it's just a crazy time right now with all the change in the retail environment. But if you don't have people close by, you don't have a built-in customer base. They may just go elsewhere for whatever the latest and greatest is. And so I think people are starting to understand, and I think it's going to take a while, but that's why the objective design and development standards are so important, because if we don't do these projects right, if they're not designed well, then people are going to continue to associate multifamily development or mixed use with the kind of negative perceptions that some of them may have currently. So that's why the objective design standards, given our now limited role in design review, why they're so important.
Thank you, Desmond.
Thank you, Desmond, for your presentation. And I just want to piggyback on that. Down here in Galt, we have some of those same issues that we're facing with some of our seniors and the lack of appropriate senior housing, as well as Councilwoman Aquino mentioning children coming back to the communities not being able to invest in the community they grew up in because of either cost or, they just want a different way of life than you and I did when we first, purchased our own house and things like that. So thank you so much. I appreciate your insight and presentation.
Thank you. Director Gore?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And, Rich, it's interesting because I think every jurisdiction gets pushed back when we talk about multifamily. I mean, people just freak out. But then to your point, like college students want to be able to have some place to come home to live, especially if you've got jobs, or seniors do. And I really appreciate your point about having visuals about what high density looks like. And sometimes it's like, we just have to ignore this because yes, the state is saying we need to do this, but at the same time, we also have residents who actually want it. So it's such a challenge, but I do have a question about mixed use and retail, right? And you showed your example of the the units, right? The high density and then retail on the bottom. And in Roseville, we have 2 projects that have retail on the bottom and they're affordable housing mixed use, and nobody's moving in, no retail. And is that to help make the project pencil? Because I don't know if it's needed anymore because we've struggled in the city to get anybody into those locations. Is it worth even trying to do that because of the challenge of getting retail to those locations? I know you need it when you want like a whole community, right? Walkable, you need the retail there. But if you have a standalone project with housing on the top, retail on the bottom.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. So we've had the same challenge here with our Bidwell Point Apartments, which is a mixed income development in the Central Business District that was developed by St. Anton. They had a small retail space. It wasn't in the best location because of a lack of foot traffic, and they really struggled to rent it out. And I think out in suburban jurisdictions, particularly in areas that you're trying to activate over time, probably the better approach is to do something along the lines of live work units, where that ground floor space can be used as a home office space, can be used as a living area, but eventually can convert into a business or retail space. So West Sacramento did this over on 3rd Street as you cross over the I Street Bridge. As part of that development, which I believe is the Metro Place development that was done by Regis Homes, they did live work units along 3rd Street because they wanted to activate 3rd Street, but they knew that there wasn't enough demand at that point for retail, and that they would struggle to fill that area. So I think it really will depend on the area. In our case, on the East Bidwell corridor, we already have a lot of retail. I don't know that we necessarily need more retail. So a live work unit or some office space might be a better fit, but the projects generally don't need it for the project to pencil. And in fact, lenders are still somewhat gun shy about counting the lease revenue from a ground floor retail because of the difficulty of getting tenants in there. So generally, my understanding is that developers have to show the project pencils without the ground floor retail. I think it's only in proven markets like downtowns in like San Francisco and other places where you've got heavy foot traffic where lenders will be more familiar with it and account it as part of the pro forma.
So thank you for the presentation, Desmond. I really like what you had to say about visuals and stories. I think I just kind of want to echo what some of my fellow directors have already said related to in more of the suburban areas. Kind of multifamily can sometimes be a scary word for our constituents, but I know in my particular experience, whenever I've talked with people about mixed use, walkable developments, I haven't had anyone opposed to that. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic where, on one hand, multifamily is kind of scary, but on the other hand, I think people really recognize the value of having mixed use walkable developments, and they want those in general, right? And so I think the storytelling and the visuals are absolutely huge to convey that. And I loved that in this case, you showed a specific example, right? Today, this is kind of this retail center that we have, right? That's what it looks like today, and this is what it could look like in the future. And I imagine that was really positive. So I had a question kind of about the Folsom Plan area, given that it's greenfield development, and I have a large greenfield development in my community where I live in Plumas Lake, and I have this really passionate vision to try to take one of the planned retail centers there and try to get a little mixed use walkable town center built there instead. I assume that probably wasn't part of the original Folsom Plan design. And so was that, and if that's wrong, you can let me know, but assuming it wasn't, was it kind of an area that was zoned commercial and now you've gone back and worked with the owner to change that to more of a mixed use town center, or what was kind of the evolution of that?
Actually, credit to the landowners, Westland Capital and the city as well. That was always envisioned to be a town center. I think when you do these kinds of new greenfield developments, I think the community doesn't want to feel like there's no center there. There's no kind of gathering place. And particularly since we're bifurcated now, by Highway 50, we don't want there to be a north and south situation. We want there to be people feeling like they're part of Folsom, and we want to have these nodes, in the community that act as gathering places, regardless of where you live. So hopefully the central business district will become part of that. We have the historic district, and then we've got the Palladio area down by Bidwell and the Bidwell interchange with Highway 50. And then the goal is to have another major gathering place for the community down in the Folsom Plan area. So, I think now is actually a really good time to start re-looking at areas that you might have be exclusively commercial, because Bed Bath and Beyond has just gone into Chapter 11. You've got Best Buy is teetering. So you've got a lot of these big box retailers that may either be downsizing because they know a lot of their purchases are made online, and so they just want more of a storefront and a pickup area. And people want to have more of an experience rather than just driving and shopping. And it's been demonstrated in a number of commercial real estate studies that if you create an area where people can gather, they're more likely to spend more money because they're there for long. And then by putting housing there, the other benefit is that you've got a built-in customer base, so the area is less likely to see a downturn when the latest and greatest shopping center opens up, a mile down the road. The one area that I've looked to for kind of ideas and inspiration is the Stapleton Airport development that was done outside of Denver, and they did a whole mixed use kind of commercial or mixed use area with a town green that acts as a gathering space, and they have programming there. And then but in back of that and adjacent to it, they have some larger big box retailers like a Target and other things like that. But then it connects, that town green connects to the rest of the community, and it ends up kind of being where all the residences, a lot of the residences look onto that, and it kind of becomes this community gathering place. So they have some place to gather, to shop, to mingle, rather than necessarily hopping on the freeway and getting into downtown Denver. So I think more and more developers are starting to think about that because of the notion of the 15-minute or 20-minute walkable community.
Great, thank you. Director Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Desmond. I wasn't going to say anything, but you mentioned Stapleton, where I just came back from recently to take a look at it. And one of the things, and you were talking earlier about, the best way to sell multifamily to the community is to do high quality design and construction. Stapleton is a good example, and I've been on a soapbox since I've been back, of where both California and even our local, we need to look at our local rules and fees. We have CEQA, they don't. There's a lot of costs that they don't incur that just being California, our developers are going to. But at the local level, we need to look at how we can incentivize developers to go above and beyond the standard or substandard design. Like in Stapleton, as an example, I turn on, shows you what I look at. I'm a nerd. I turn on my Facebook and they know what I'm looking at, so I get ads from home builders. And I look at, I won't name any names, but some home builders we consider here substandard, and they're major home builders there, and they have incredible product on multifamily, triplex, fourplexes, both for affordable units as well as market rate. And they're able to do that because it pencils out. They come here and we get, the inferior product because our fees are too high. They got to go through all of the regulatory environment in California. So, we really need to look at how, because, they're only going to make so much profit and they got to make a profit. So what they'll do is cut down their costs, which means, less attractive, less creative design. So I really think that we need to, as a state and even our local jurisdictions, need to take a deep dive into, what our impact fees look like and in order to get that higher quality product that you're talking about. That's my sermon for the day.
Thank you, Director. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, any public comment on this item?
There is no public comment on this item.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Desmond.
Director Bradford, do you mind if I add one very brief comment? Just a bit of a shameless plug, because the example about how showing kind of the design and what this could look like and the high quality product was kind of instrumental in helping move this along. We do have a bench of consultants where we've streamlined the ability for your staff, your local agencies, to take advantage of services like that. You can go through a much more streamlined request for proposals process. So if that's of interest to any of you or your staff, you can follow up with myself or with Greg, and we can kind of help you get that process started and walk you through how it works. And that's a service that we're offering to all of the awardees of our Green Means Go funding, but it's not limited to just them. So if there's other funds or things like that that communities have, that or cities have, that and counties that want to look into using our bench, we've got that open for folks.
Great, thank you. So next up is item 4, 2025 Blueprint Outreach Engagement. AJ?
Hi, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. I was struck by one of Desmond's comments about the look and feel, and it reminded me very quickly of a process that the city of Sacramento just went through to promote their missing middle housing campaign, and they use the same consultant with very similar design standards and styles of illustration, and it goes a long way to sort of see those in place and to understand how like a fourplex really fits the character of the neighborhood in a way that folks don't really necessarily understand. So plug for that. For our outreach though, I want to give you a quick update where we're at. We're super deep into our pop-up workshops that we're doing to support the blueprint. So far, so I guess one quick bit of context, we're required to do 8 of these, 1 in each county, and then a couple in Sacramento County as a nod to the scale of that county. But because we're really taking a much deeper dive, I think this round on the planning effort, we wanted to take a much deeper dive on the outreach effort as well. So we've committed to try to do a pop-up in every single jurisdiction. So try to get to 28. So far we've done 12. We have 11 more calendared, and then we have over the next 6 weeks, and then we have just a handful more that I'll touch on in a second here that we need maybe a little bit of your help to get us there. Real brief for the folks that are on this committee, we're going to visit Isleton on May 19th. And this one is a unique one from some of the other ones that we've done, given the scale of the city. Typically, we look for an event that's already occurring. A lot of times that's like a food truck event or a farmer's market, or we were just in Winters for a kids' day. They had a great parade and then a kind of a fair in the park. What we're going to do in Isleton is a little bit different in that we're going to go visit their main street and just kind of pop up outside of one of their businesses that we know gets traffic, and we, with permission, that we know gets traffic at particular hours, and we're going to go kind of hang out there because that meets sort of that same need of finding a spot where people kind of naturally congregate and reaching them there. So that might be an option for some of our other smaller communities where we're having some trouble. In the Sacramento County area, we just visited Fern Beacon Middle School. We're going to Rosemont this evening, and then Orangevale Farmers Market next week. Roseville, we went to their farmers market. Yuba City's farmers market's in a couple weeks. The Folsom farmers market was in mid-April. Going to the Galt Saturday market this week. And then we've been to the Yuba County North Beale Transit Center, and then Director Bradford, thank you for following up on that Plumas Lakes picnic in the park. That sounds great. We'll continue to email with you on that one. We do have a couple though that I mentioned that we're having a little bit of trouble finding sort of that key neighborhood scale event or community event. So Wheatland, Loomis, Placer County, and Sutter County directors, if those are your jurisdictions, I would either now follow up in an email or have some staff get back to us. That would be amazing. Really looking for, like I said, any scale, whether that's outside of a business district on a main street that might have some public space that we can be at, to a transit center, farmers markets that maybe we haven't heard about. We'd love to hear that. I'll pause there just in case there was any that came to mind.
So AJ, I'll reach out to you via email, but I don't see Director West online anymore, but Wheatland has a pet parade coming up and they have some vendors associated with that. And also I'll get you the details. They have like a little vendor area. So that might be a good opportunity. A lot of the community comes out for that. I think they've had a lot of them. This is almost, I don't know if this is their 100th year, but it's a long-standing tradition.
Pet as in like dogs and cats?
Yep. So anyone comes, and chickens, pigs, whatever, you just bring your pet and you walk in the parade, and or if you don't have a pet, you can walk in the parade. It's a great little event. So
that sounds amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the timeline? When do you need to have that done by?
We're looking to wrap them up by the end of June. I think one of them we maybe have to push into like that first couple days of July. But that's our ideal scenario, just so that we can. The reason part of what we're doing at the pop-up is we're encouraging folks to do our survey, and so at some point we sort of just need to cut that off to be able to do analysis of it. So that's sort of what's driving the timeline.
Okay, I have a couple ideas. I'll email you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So speaking of the surveys, we have a goal of getting over 1,000 surveys, and so far we're at 860 as of this morning. So we're well on our way there, in good part to our community-based organizations who we have developed a grant program that I think you've heard about in the previous months. They're listed in the staff item, so I won't rehash those ones, but really do appreciate working with those groups. And then also the pop-ups are supporting those. Very briefly, we've held 8 focus groups, 4 of them in English, 4 of them in Spanish, on the same topics, which are listed again in the staff item there. And we're working with the consultant now we've gotten sort of the preliminary report of quotes and summaries and that sort of thing, but we're working with them to dive a little deeper on the qualitative analysis on spreading those stories and stuff that folks have into something a little bit more concise that we can then use in our planning process. But those groups, because they are like a 90-minute conversation, we really get like really interesting feedback sometimes that you just don't get in a poll and you don't get in a survey. So the quotes and stuff that we've seen have been really insightful, and we're looking forward to sharing that. The real reason I'm here this afternoon is to set up a polling presentation in a couple of weeks at the board meeting. So we partnered with Valley Vision to do a scientific poll. They work with the department at Sac State to do that in a quantitative analysis that is statistically significant. So that has so we can actually track that back about 20 years compared to other polls that we've done using similar questions, both with Valley Vision and on our own from the original blueprint and through several MTP cycles. So that'll be coming to the board meeting. Some really interesting stuff there that we're already sort of seeing out of it, with just, you know, some stuff that you might sort of think, you know, and then this just sort of backs it up. And then there's some new insights as well. You know, just housing types are going to housing type needs differ across the region. They're going to differ based on demographics, where folks are at in their life. A really interesting view on sort of the split. There was an almost equal split on like the future of our region, and very similar to when we embarked on the Blueprint program 20 years ago, is like there's, you know, sort of this equal amounts of pessimism and optimism onto the future, and this sort of like the views on why growth is either negative or positive. And so it's interesting to see those splits as well, and they'll dive into that in the presentation. And then what's coming up after all of that is we're going to, we have a regional workshop on June 16th, where we're going to dive a little bit into the pathways that you all have seen through presentations, either through the committee or through the board. But we're doing it at the regional scale. We're really inviting all of your peers. And so far, I think we've been mostly reaching out to them directly. And so we'll reach out to you as well to sort of, if you're comfortable, to sort of leverage your relationships with your peers on councils and boards to encourage them to attend. It's really critical to the success of the plan in terms of you know, the future of the region, to really have consensus across the region and not just on our board. And so that's important, and we hope to get really you know, a few hundred folks at Folsom at that event. And then on Monday, May 8th, we are going to the Strategic Planning Committee of SACOG to sort of dive into our agenda for that morning workshop already. So want to make sure that the board leadership is familiar with what we're doing, thinks is the right approach, really gives us some good feedback on that. And then after the June 16th regional workshop, we're going to take all of this that we're hearing, whether it's through a survey, through a poll, through a focus group, and through the event. And we really work, the outreach staff and our external relations staff really work hand in hand with Clint and the planning staff and the technical team to sort of marry in a lot of what we've heard from feedback and input with what we know through our modeling and data analysis, to sort of help you frame up like what a preferred pathway might be for the eventual final plan. So that's the long version of what we've been up to on the outreach team and where we're headed. So I'm happy to answer any questions, talk about the June event more, or leave it at that.
Dr. Gore?
Thanks. Hey, thanks, AJ. Shoot, what was I going to ask you? Oh, I know. If you could please, I know you're reaching out to our colleagues about the event on the 16th. I would love to share that directly with my colleagues, but I don't have anything to share. Okay. So if you could get that out to us, that would be really helpful. I was just looking to see if I had anything, and I don't see anything. So that would be great. I'd be happy to do that. And I'll try to think of some. I'm going to ask my colleague, see if there's something in North Auburn for Placer County, and I'll check with my colleague in Granite Bay, because those are really the areas that have unincorporated people. So I'll check with them for you. And if you have any information about like what the ask is, right, for those areas, if you'd send that to me as well, that way I can just forward it with a little bit more detail than.
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
opinion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Director Bulahan?
Oh, yeah, I noticed you said May 19th, that they're visiting in Ileton. I'm thinking the only things open on May 19th that would have somebody hanging out would be the beer room and the 2 dispensaries.
Exactly, and we're that's why we're planning our hours into the sort of late afternoon, very early evening to catch folks on their way in, not on the way out.
Yeah, because I'm thinking the beer room on Friday nights, they either have a comedian or a band. Because that's the only thing I was thinking of when you said May 19th. I'm thinking, oh, that's a Friday. So yeah, that's the only things open like later in that day on Main Street, the dispensaries and the beer room.
Yeah, we chatted with your colleague, who's the proprietor down there of Maiwa, and she suggested that a Friday afternoon might be a great.
Yeah, she promotes it at every meeting.
Well, in fairness, AJ is funny.
Yeah, he could probably like just step right in. I don't know if she has comedy night or schedules one, but yeah, it's one or the other.
Okay, anything else? Any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Let's move on to item 5, 2022-2023 regional funding round staff recommendation. Chris.
Thank you, Chair Bradford and members of the committee. Give me one short second and I will share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation okay? Great, thank you so much. The item before you this afternoon is an info item for the staff recommendations for the 2022-2023 funding round. I'll begin with a little bit of background on the process. In April of 2022, the board approved the funding estimate, the program budget for the 2022-2023 funding round, and also the revolving match program. The funding estimate of approximately $130 million was approved to fund the regional funding programs and the community design program. That estimate was made from projected apportionments from the 2025 and 2026 funding fiscal years and contains a mixture of state and federal formula funding. An additional $1.7 million was added later on from the Sacramento Transportation Authority from their Smart Growth Incentive Program that goes to support the matching funds for the Sacramento County community design applications. In October of last year, the board approved the program guidelines for the 3 programs that fall under the umbrella of the regional program: community design, maintenance and modernization, and transformative, and authorized staff to release a call for projects. Just to recap on these programs, the community design program is designed to fund transportation projects that drive land use changes and promote placemaking and the 7 original blueprint principles. This program has an approximately $13 million program budget for this cycle. The maintenance and modernization program focuses on state of good repair projects that are under $5 million that also support the MTP SCS performance outcomes. This program has an approximate $60 million program budget. And the transformative program. These are projects that are generally over $5 million and projects that include roadway capacity increasing elements. A point of note, the board approved at this October meeting to limit this program to 25% of the regional fund, which limited that program budget to $28.5 million. And lastly, for the last program that's not reflected here, because we're not making, not looking at those awards today, but the revolving match program. This rotating program is designed to help our partners better compete for larger state and federal grant opportunities by adding a strategic amount of funding to a project. This program runs approximately twice a year and has a project cap of about $4 million per project. And if awarded on a project and that project pursues their identified grant program, if they're unsuccessful in obtaining that grant, those funds are then pulled back off of that project and put back into the fund for the next cycle. So they are given a conditional award if awarded. The second cycle of this program is currently open with applications due tomorrow. And we are expecting to bring a recommendation for funding for that program back to you in the committee and board on the June meeting. And that program has a budget of about $28.5 million. The framework for these programs was developed in 2020 for the 2021 regional funding program and was carried forward through this round. While the framework was carried forward, staff was able to make some changes to the program to bring them up to more modern standards and also include equity as a component through the programs. Prior to the release of the guidelines and the call for projects, SACOG staff met beginning in June of 2022 all the way through October, individually with each of the jurisdictions, the 19 jurisdictions in the 4-county region, plus with some of our other agency partners, including transit agencies and JPAs, to go over the new program and describe it in good detail and to help strategize those jurisdictions and entities projects for the programs. We heard two things overwhelmingly throughout the course of these one-on-one meetings. First is that staff capacity is a challenge. Staffing challenges and large amount of vacancies are prevalent across a lot of our jurisdictions, and this is really affecting our smaller jurisdictions. And second, that state of good repair projects or road rehab projects are the first and foremost priority projects for our local jurisdictions. Because of this feedback directly went into staff's recommendation to limit the transformative program to 25% and to focus on a more maintenance and modernization heavy round this round. And that was approved and really calls for released in November of last year. So the application due dates for the 3 programs were staggered over 6 weeks, beginning in the middle of January and ending in the first week of February. We received a total of 83 applications for almost $312 million in requested funding. Every program was considerably oversubscribed and very competitive as we went into this round, but none more oversubscribed than the transformative program. We received 17 applications and $170 million in requests for a total program budget of $28.5 million. So I'm going to briefly go over the review process of how we got to our staff recommendations. Each program assembled working groups to review their applications. These working groups are comprised of diverse professionals from across the region, mostly agency staff, local jurisdiction staff from your agencies, which we appreciate, and also SACOG staff. Once the applications were received and screened by SACOG, the working groups were assembled and began to review the applications. The community design program had 1 working group. Maintenance and modernization, because of the large amount of applications, had 3 working groups. And the transformative program had 2 working groups and an additional engineering review that focused specifically on funding eligibility and deliverability of those larger projects in the transformative program. The working groups met, led by SACOG, to discuss the projects, and then when completed their review, the final scores were given to SACOG staff. These scores were based on the program's specific guidelines and outcomes that were approved in the original guidelines that were adopted in October. And then staff compiled the working group findings into a final staff recommendation, and that is before you today. The staff recommendations are attached to your staff report in both Attachment A and Attachment B. Attachment A is a summary table of the awards, and Attachment B goes into more depth project descriptions and some preliminary feedback from the working groups. I will also add that the summary table, there are awards for 3 projects in here for the revolving match program. One is a confirmed award for the city of West Sacramento for $1.5 million as they were approved their active transportation program grant they were pursuing, and two conditional awards for Sacramento County and for Capital Corridor that are still awaiting the outcome of the SB1 competitive programs announcements that we expect next month. The staff recommendation in front of you is recommending a total of 42 projects be approved for funding. That is 19 projects from the community design program. That includes 15 non-competitive applications or projects, 4 competitive, 17 projects from the maintenance and modernization program, and 6 projects from the transformative program. These recommendations include some great innovations in transit, such as initial funding for the region's first BRT corridor, bus rapid transit, and active transportation projects throughout the region, as well as much needed road rehabilitation projects. Prior to releasing the agenda packet last Friday, staff reached out to all applicants to notify them personally about the outcome and the recommendations moving forward. That also included an offer for anybody who was not successful, a larger, more in-depth debrief on their applications from the working group notes, so we can help those jurisdictions improve those applications for either our next funding round or other funding opportunities in between then. And we are beginning to schedule those meetings already for May and June currently. So this morning, the Transportation Committee took an action on this item and unanimously approved to send to the board on May 18th, the recommendations to move forward. And so this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions from committee members? Okay. Not seeing any yet. Any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment for this item.
Okay, great. Thank you for that presentation, Chris. Looks like there's nothing from the committee at this time. And so with that, we will move on to committee reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any committee members have any committee reports?
I don't really have a committee report. I just kind of have a report. I don't know how many of you know that our town manager, Sean Rabe, is moving to Auburn to be town manager of Auburn. And today we announced that we're going to take Colfax's West Heathcock down in Loomis. So it's kind of exciting news. If it's not really for this committee, but thought I'd share because it came out today. And I also, can somebody help me figure out how to raise my hand? Because I've been clicking everywhere and I can't, I guess my Zoom thing doesn't have a place to raise my hand.
It should be under the reactions button, I think. At least that's where it is on mine. It's under reactions.
Correct. It should be under reactions where you have the little the emoji things. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I was clicking the little arrow next to it. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to raise my hand proper, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So I see it there now. Thank you.
And I'm really glad. Congratulations. I mean, at least for keeping people in the county. So yeah, that's good news. Bad for you.
We're going to miss Sean. I worked with him a lot before I was on council when I was at the chamber, and I'm going to really miss him, but I'm looking forward to working with Wes. I think he's going to do a good job for us. So thank you.
Great. Anything else? Okay, well, since I mentioned it earlier, I guess I'll just give everyone the details of the 99th annual Wheatland Pet Parade. It is coming up on Saturday, May 20th, so just a couple weeks away. Parade starts at 9:30 a.m. and it goes down Main Street, kind of starts near the Little Red Schoolhouse, which is near with the Wheatland Police Department, and then winds up going around Front Street, which is kind of historic downtown Wheatland. And so if anyone wants to come check that out, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to enter with your pet, you just show up. You don't have to do anything ahead of time, and then you can actually walk in the parade as opposed to just view it. So anyway, it looks like we've got a couple more. Director Lozano?
Yes, thank you very much. Hey, I just wanted to mention, our SACOG team will be out at the Saturday Market in Galt from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. this Saturday at the 4th Street Promenade. I'll be out there for most of that time. If you're in, have my phone number, feel free to text. I think our local senator will be there as well. State senator will be there as well for a little bit of time. So feel free to reach out, come see our Cinco de Mayo celebration at our market. And it's certainly going to have many people there that are going to enjoy the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Bulahan?
I would be amiss if I did not mention our 100-year anniversary of being incorporated. That the chamber is holding something, I think from 4 to 7 p.m. at their chamber offices on 25 Main Street. And I think on Sunday, on the 14th, the fire department is like having a little celebration of their own at the fire station.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured I'd be amiss for not mentioning the 100-year anniversary.
Great. Thank you. There is one receive and file item 7. And any other matters, Robert or Clint, that we need to cover?
I don't think so. I think we're good here.
Okay. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting, and the next committee meeting is going to be on Thursday, June 4th at 1:30. So thank you, everyone.